Okay, Jim, we are all good to go on the broadcast and the recording. So as soon as it rolls over, you can take it away.
Very good. We'll start right at 5:30. It looks like everybody's here.
Great.
And according to my computer, it's now 5:30. It is April 13th. My name is Jim Brewer. I'm the hearings officer for the city of Salem. We have two cases on our agenda for tonight. ZC 22-01 for 1976 Davis Road South is the first one, and CU 2201 for 325 West Vista Avenue South is the second one. We'll go right ahead and jump into the order of proceedings for the zone change, ZC 22-01. This hearing is being conducted virtually due to the COVID pandemic still. We are limiting testimony from neighborhood organizations and persons in favor or opposition to those who signed in before 3 p.m. And I don't believe anybody did other than the applicant. Consequently, the order of tonight's proceedings will be a staff report to be presented by Kyle Kearns, the applicant's presentation, which will limit to 15 minutes. I don't believe we have a neighborhood report, and we don't have anybody else who signed in. So that'll be it. That means that there won't be any rebuttal by the applicant because there won't be anybody to rebut. You can reserve your final written argument if you want to do that. And I'll try to remember to ask you when we get to that point. I do want to direct everybody's attention to the applicable criteria that are found in the notice and staff report. The testimony and evidence for the public hearing really should be directed towards these criteria. For a quasi-judicial zone change, Salem Revised Code 265.005 sub E sub 1 states that a quasi-judicial zone change shall be granted if all of the following criteria are met. A, the zone change is justified based on the existence of one or more of the following. 1, a mistake in the application of a land use designation to the property. 2, a demonstration that there's been a change in the economic, demographic, or physical character of the vicinity such that the proposed zone would be compatible with the vicinity's development pattern. Or 3, a demonstration the proposed zone is equally or better suited for the property than the existing zone. A proposed zone is equally or better suited for the property than an existing zone if the physical characteristics of the property are appropriate for the proposed zone and the uses allowed by the proposed zone are logical with the surrounding land uses. B, if the zone change is city initiated and the change is for other than city owned property, the zone change is in the public interest and would be of general benefit. C, the zone change complies with the applicable provisions of the Salem Area Comprehensive Plan. D, the zone change complies with applicable statewide planning goals and applicable administrative rules adopted by the Department of Land Conservation and Development. E, if the zone change requires a comprehensive plan change from an industrial designation to a non-industrial designation, or a comprehensive plan change from a commercial or employment designation to any other designation, a demonstration the proposed zone change is consistent with the most recent economic opportunities analysis and the parts of the comprehensive plan which address the provisions of land for economic development and employment growth, or be accompanied by an amendment to the comprehensive plan to address the proposed zone change, or include both a demonstration and an amendment to the comprehensive plan. F, the zone change does not significantly affect a transportation facility, or if the zone change would significantly affect a transportation facility, the significant effects can be adequately addressed through the measures associated with or conditions imposed on the zone change. And G, the property is currently served or capable of being served with public facilities and services necessary to support the uses allowed by the proposed zone. This is the time when I would like to remind the applicant, because she's the only person present, that failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the city or other parties the opportunities to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the State Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. And failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So this is the time and place to raise any issues you have, and if not, you may not be able to later. Question for anyone who's here: are there any objections on jurisdictional grounds on the holding of this hearing, meaning that this isn't the sort of thing that ought to be in front of the hearings officer? I'm not seeing any. This is ZC 22-01, 1976 Davis Road South. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, great. Thank you for that. Get this set up here. Sorry, the Zoom went hiding on me. Okay.
I can see you and you're going well.
Okay. How are we looking now?
That's it. We've got the presentation.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. As noted, this is a zone change application for the property at 1976 Davis Road, as well as the abutting unit of land to the south of that address. So it comprises of 2 lots. And at this time, I'd like to enter into the record the staff report and the associated attachments, the presentation I'm about to give, as well as I'd like to note that on page 1 of the staff report, there is an error in the expiration date as mandated by the 120-day rule with state law. The applicant had actually requested an extension to that deadline to August 14th, 2022. And on that first page, it does state April 4th. And I'd like to note that in the record now. The last page of the staff report where the decision and recommendation are provided, it does cite the correct date.
Thank you. Those will all be entered into the record and as amended.
Great, thank you. I'd also just like to reference that this was continued from the March 3rd hearing, and the requested hearing date was today. And so this is the continuance of that public hearing. The subject property, as noted, is off of Davis Road South, which is a collector's street in the City of Salem Transportation System Plan. Davis Road leads to Liberty Road south to the east, and then Skyline Road south to the west, which are both considered major arterials. The property directly to the west of the subject property is outside of the city limits and is considered in Marion County, but the majority of the properties abutting the property are within the city limits, except for the property that bounds the site to the south and to the west. If you take a look at the aerial photo here, you'll see kind of the general land use of the surrounding area. Directly to the east is a already built out multifamily development with an RM2 zoning. If you look to the north, as well as to the west and south, there's a variety of residential development from newer subdivisions to more kind of rural residential land that would comprise of the land and the unannexed portions of the vicinity. Also to the west of the, to the east of the multifamily development is a church. And again, as noted, the city's limits do abut the subject properties to the west. The proposed zone change is again for an RM1 zoning to an RM2 for the subject properties. Abutting the properties to the east are already RM2 zoned properties. And to the north and the west and south is a variety of residential development, including single family subdivisions and some undeveloped land that is within Marion County. The zoning abutting the property within Marion County is the urban transition minimum 5-acre lot and is considered outside of the city's jurisdiction as it is not annexed. The properties to the north, and then to the west, kind of outside of, in the city limits, but outside of the abutting properties are also zoned RS and RA, the green and yellow there representing single family, and the orange representing multifamily. And again, this proposal is to change the zoning from RM1 to RM2, kind of the lighter orange to the darker orange in that case. We did provide notice to the Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association as is required, and we did provide a secondary courtesy notice to inform them of the zone change, and to this date have not received any comment from the neighborhood association. The subject property is not in a homeowners association, so we have not received any comment from them as it would not be applicable in this case. And again, to this date, we have not received any comments from any community members. Salem Kaiser School District reviewed the proposal and noted that approximately 89 students between the Liberty Elementary, Crossville Middle School, and Sprague High School are expected when the proposal goes forward with development, and that at the time of development, the school district would like to see covered shelters and bus pullouts for development outside of a mile of the school. And in this case, Crossville Middle School and Sprague High School are within a walk zone, in which that case they have requested at the time of development that pedestrian amenities be provided to encourage walking to and from the school. The Public Works Department has also reviewed the proposal and the associated transportation planning rule analysis, and it has found there is no impact on the transportation system from the subject proposal. It also noted that at the time of development, a UGA development permit will be required, and that in its current status, it appears that there is adequate infrastructure for water, sewer, and storm to support the increased zoning from RM1 to RM2. Additionally, Public Works noted that site-specific infrastructure requirements will be addressed at the site plan review process. The fire department had also reviewed the proposal and just indicated that fire department access and water supply is reviewed at the time of development, so that would not be applicable to a zone change. And building and safety had similar comments, as they had no concerns with the zone changes. There are no buildings to review. As noted previously, the approval criteria can be found in SRC 265-005E. And in summary, the proposal from RM1 to RM2 is supportive by the approval criteria and the findings provided in the staff report, as the area can be adequately served by city infrastructure and it does not impact the transportation system as noted in the staff report. Additionally, the designation from RM1 to RM2 is compatible with the surrounding development area and is equally or better suited to the vicinity, as it is matching the RM2 zoning to the east, and it allows for multifamily development consistent with the comprehensive plan designation of multifamily that this site already has. And further, the comprehensive plan supports this project or this proposal, as the housing needs analysis identifies between the planning horizon of 2015 to 2035 a deficit of approximately 3,000 dwelling units, and by increasing the allowable density from the change from RM1 to RM2, the maximum density of this site would go from about 50 units to about 105, that being the maximum, not necessarily the minimum, but however, the increase from the current density allowance to the new RM2 density would enable a shrinking of the dwelling units identified in the housing need analysis. Further, it is also in the public interest to change the zoning, as it would increase the ability to allow for housing availability throughout the city. Staff's recommendation is that the zone change request from RM1 to RM2 for the 3.75 acres at 1976 Davis Road Southeast be approved. And thus this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, that was pretty succinct. The written report is, I think, very thorough. I don't really have any questions. I had a couple things that I had to look up. I don't know that I had seen linking and boundary facilities before, but taking a quick look at the code, I found them. So that was easy and useful. Thank you. That puts us on our agenda at the applicant's presentation. Ms. Dalton, do you want to make a presentation?
Just briefly. Good evening. My name is Brandy Dalton. I'm with Multi-Tech Engineering. I'm here tonight representing the applicant. Kyle did a great job summarizing the staff report, so there's not much for me to say. The only thing I will say briefly is that it does help with housing needs. Right now, we can do a maximum of 52 units on the site. With the zone change would allow a maximum 105, which in reality, once you do parking and landscaping, really probably about 80 units, maybe 90 units maximum that you would see on the site. But really, like I said, Kyle, he summarized, we meet all the requirements, criteria, we're consistent with the neighborhood, which really warrants approval of the zone change. So that's really it for me. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
So thinking about the low end of units, about how many bedrooms would that be? To be decided.
But I'm not, I have to do math here. I'm sorry.
No, I won't make you do that.
I don't know exactly how many bedrooms, but typically if we were looking at about 80 units, majority of those would be 2-bedroom units. That's typically what you see. You'd see a few 3-bedrooms scattered in there and a couple 1-bedrooms, but majority be 2 bedrooms.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Since we don't have rebuttal and it doesn't look like we have any public testimony, this would be your opportunity to waive your final written argument if you wish.
I waive.
Okay. Having done that, and again, Kyle, thank you. Good staff report. It'll take me probably 10 days to get a final written decision out on this, but there isn't any issue raised by the public. The staff's support is there, and so this is going to be approved. It'll just take me that long to get findings out. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, this hearing is closed. We will move on to the next one. And let me get to my right stuff on those. So this is CU 22-01, 325 West Vista. Oh, and it's up on the screen too. Thank you. Let me get to my order of proceedings for it. Okay, I'm still Jim Brewer. I'm still the hearings officer. We're still in the same meeting. The order of proceedings for this hearing for CU 22-01 will be a staff report to be presented by Pamela Cole. The applicant's presentation, we'll limit that to 15 minutes. I don't believe there's a neighborhood report, and I don't think anybody else has signed in before 3 p.m. today. That means there probably won't be any rebuttal for the applicant, and so I will try to remember to ask you whether or not you wish to waive your ability to have a final written argument. You're of course not required to do that. Gives you an extra week if you choose to sum up your thoughts. I do want to direct your attention to the applicable criteria. They're found in the notice and staff report. The testimony and evidence for the public hearing really should be directed towards these criteria, because that's what I'm going to use to make the decision. For conditional use, the Salem Revised Code 240.005 sub D states an application for a conditional use permit shall be granted if all of the following criteria are met. 1, the proposed use is allowed as a conditional use in the zone. 2, the reasonably likely adverse impacts of the use on the immediate neighborhood can be minimized through the imposition of conditions. And 3, the proposed use will be reasonably compatible with and have minimal impact on the livability or appropriate development of surrounding property. This is a time when I need to tell the applicant and others who are watching that failure to raise an issue accompanied by the statements or evidence sufficient to afford the city or other parties the opportunities to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the State Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue would preclude an action for damages in circuit court. So this is the time and place to raise any issues you have or you may not be able to later. Again, question for those who are participating: are there any objections on jurisdictional grounds on the holding of this hearing? Meaning that it's not the kind of thing that ought to be in front of the hearings officer. I'm not seeing any. This is CU 22-01 325 West Vista Avenue South. May we have the staff report, Ms. Cole?
Good
And
evening. Hello. I'm Pamela Cole, Planner 2 with Community Development. I'd like to request that the staff report attachments, case file, and presentation be entered into the record.
And they will be entered into the record. Yeah, thank you.
This is a proposal to operate a non-hosted short-term rental in an existing 2-bedroom single-family dwelling, and this would require a conditional use approval in the single-family residential zone. The property is located on West Vista, a dead-end local street, south of the Collector Street, Hanson Avenue South, and west of Major Arterial Liberty Road South, and also not far from Commercial Street Southeast. On the comprehensive plan map, the subject property and the surrounding properties are designated single-family residential, and areas closer to Liberty Road are designated multifamily, community service, cemetery, and commercial. The subject property and all the surrounding properties are zoned single-family residential. Properties closer to Liberty Road are zoned RM2, multiple family residential, cemetery, retail commercial, and in the purple, general commercial. The subject property is surrounded by other single-family dwellings, and it's a little bit of a blurry picture, but the property is within walking distance of retail and restaurant uses, as well as other uses on Liberty and Commercial. The property has large trees and other landscaping. The street width allows on-street parking on both sides. The proposal for the conditional use is a change of land use inside the existing dwelling. No changes are proposed outside. The garage and the driveway now provide at least 2 off-street parking spaces, which are the minimum for a single-family dwelling, and there's no additional parking or bike parking required. The site plan also shows locations of decks and some of the large trees. The dwelling setbacks are 13 feet from west, 23 feet from east, and 34 feet from the rear property line, which exceed the minimum setbacks, which would be 5 feet on the sides and a rear setback of 14 feet for a 1-story dwelling. There is no fence, but I did want to point out that the setbacks are quite large compared to standard. And that wasn't supposed to happen. So the driveway, it looked fine this afternoon. Okay, let me see if I can go back and.
Actually, I think it's fine.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, it's sideways, but
it's sideways. Yes.
I see things sideways anyway. It'll be fine.
Just want to make sure I get all the pictures in there. Okay, so the property slopes upward. It's a little hard to see, especially when it's tilted like this.
Okay,
so
now your presentation has been dropped off completely.
Huh, that's odd. Okay.
Huh.
I didn't do anything that should have dropped it. Oh. So you can still see me though.
I can see you.
That's very strange. Okay, let me see if I can share again. Somehow it stopped sharing.
It was working great.
Okay, well, let's just get back up to,
There we are.
now it's back. Okay. I haven't had any problems with this for a long time. Today is the first time any problems.
I don't think this is a problem. The photographs are fine.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and
Sure.
move through. I think
Yeah.
it's fine.
So the property slopes upward from the street to the rear lot line. It's about 19 feet of elevation gain. And it's a little difficult to see here, but the garage and the entry are on a lower level and the living areas are above.
Mhm.
So the driveway and the garage provide adequate area for at least 2 vehicles. It's a wide garage door and the driveway is at least as wide as the garage door. And the driveway especially is large enough for at least 2 compact vehicles. And then the garage has additional room for at least 1 standard and perhaps a compact vehicle as well. The street, I did want to point out, it is a dead end, but there are on-street parking areas that are available on both sides. There are no signs there that prohibit on-street parking, and there's adequate maneuvering room for anyone coming in and out of the driveways. This was given as notification to the Southwest Association of Neighbors, and the applicant also discussed the project with them at a neighborhood association meeting. We haven't received any comments from Southwest Association of Neighbors prior to the staff report or since that was completed. We did receive one written comment, and there was a person who was concerned that this was a tight area to have additional traffic, but in staff's opinion, the traffic would be similar to what we would expect from a single family dwelling with a large family, perhaps, and that does have at least 2 off-street parking spaces, which are available for this proposed use. So we didn't see any problem with traffic or parking. Public Works reviewed the project and had no issues with it. Building and Safety and Fire Department did look at it. And in the staff report, we did have a few things that we wanted to make clear. One comment that we had said there would be sprinklers required. So we checked back with the building official and with the fire department and discussed the proposed conditions of approval with them. And they were satisfied with those conditions, including the cap of the 2 adults per room and maximum of 10 for the entire use. And the other conditions would not necessitate a change of use in occupancy. It would stay at what building and safety terms an R3 occupancy, just like a single family dwelling, and no sprinkler would be required. Staff found that the proposal with the conditions does meet the criteria. It is allowed as a conditional use. The conditions minimize the likely adverse impacts such as traffic and noise, and also minimize the impacts on the neighborhood, so it would be reasonably compatible with the neighborhood and surrounding properties. And in light of previous applications, we were trying to make sure we apply consistent conditions to similar applications. We also determined that it would be best to recommend a condition that the conditional use not run with the land, but stay with the current applicant owner. And in the future, if the property changes hands, someone else would have to apply for another conditional use. We just want to make sure that the property is operated in the way that the applicant intended. So our conditions would be recommendations to limit the number of occupants to 4 persons, which would be 2 per guest room. And for purposes of that condition, children under 12 years of age should not count towards the maximum number of occupants, but in no case shall the total number of guests exceed 10. And that's in light with previous decisions that allowed 2 persons per guest room. Then for the short-term rental, second condition is that it would be rented to only 1 group of guests at a time. Third condition would be that the use would be limited to lodging, and other activities such as events, parties, gatherings, etc., would not be allowed to minimize impacts on the neighbors. And fourth, as I mentioned, that we recommend that the conditional use permit be valid only for the current applicant and owner. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
We did receive a additional email from the applicant, I think early this afternoon. It included, I think, a request to have what I would have taken a request to have condition 2, I think.
1.
A 1, yes. Changed. And I've got some questions about condition 1 too, mostly because I'm a consistency thing, and I want to make sure that the words mean what we think they mean, and I want to be careful with that. Did you have thoughts on the applicant's desire, I think, which was to add another 2 adults for the kind of living area as well as the 2 bedrooms?
I wasn't comfortable with that, and I discussed it with the applicant earlier as well. So generally, we try to be consistent with previous decisions, and it was 2 per guest room. We don't consider the living room to be a guest room. So in the past, we've considered bedrooms to be guest rooms. Then if you did want to perhaps entertain an increase in the number, we would say, if that's the case, it would have to be subject to approval by building and safety, because we don't want to do anything that would inadvertently make it not be an R3 occupancy anymore. And they would need to look at the floor plan, the windows, the ingress, egress, and all of the other factors that are weighed when we decide whether something can be considered a sleeping area.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
So any possible change to this condition should be definitely subject to building and safety approval, and they would need to review floor plan and ingress egress.
I want to talk a little bit. I have some questions about condition 1, and I think it's a minor thing, but I want to make sure that it's internally consistent with itself. And the issue that I have is we aren't counting children as occupants. Do we count them as guests?
I was going by what other staffers in the past had approved.
I think I have.
Yes, the planning administrator approved this. So again, that would be up to building and safety. I did try to get them to be more specific, but then I believe the intent is 4 adults and up to 6 children, so no more than 10, because beyond that, it's becoming a big impact. And this is a small house. The previous case that we had was a much larger house, 2 stories,
yes,
at least 3 bedrooms, and we only allowed 6 instead of 4. So it was 2 guest
kind of
rooms,
my
4
memory
guest
of it.
rooms.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. I just want to make sure that we have that on the record, so that we're not looking at guests as being that can be 6 additional adults and then an infinite number of children under the age of 12. That's clearly not the intention.
And if you wanted to reword that so that it's clear, that's of course fine with staff.
I'll think about it, but it may be that we just add something to the decision to that effect, so that the condition, so that that is clear.
Great.
Okay, thank you. That's really you've addressed another question that I had already in your presentation, and that's very useful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Very thorough job, as expected.
Oh, you've muted yourself.
That's what I do. You'd think after a couple of years of doing this, we'd be good at it.
I know. We all still make those little mistakes.
Well, would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Hey, Jim, thank you. So I'm Heather Rao. Pamela, great job as expected. I saw your other reports, so this was solid. Thank you. I'm really just here to answer questions and to say hi. And my request, as I'm sure you saw in the email, for the over 4 persons, the 6 persons, is I'm a businesswoman. I'm thinking from a business perspective, and someone's looking for an applicant. They're looking for a place, and they've got a couple teenagers and a kiddo. And so I'm thinking along those lines in terms of, I want someone to look at this and go, okay, I can have my teenagers or my preteens in this space. Because it is big enough for like a good sized family in like, for like a couple nights. Obviously this would not be a big enough home for a large family for a long period of time by any stretch of the imagination. But for a couple nights, I mean, like we stay with our family, in one of those condos on the coast, and it's one room plus the open space. And that's kind of how along the lines that I'm thinking. So that's why I made the request.
With a folding couch or a Murphy bed or something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. So I understand that. And I think that you did hear Pamela's explanation for, well, if we consider that, then we've also got to add in the health, life, safety component, that building and fire need to take another look at it.
Okay.
Which might mean, yeah, we've got that, but you're going to have, but it would require a sprinkler. It would require changes to the windows, those kinds of things.
Yes, and I'll be honest up front, Jen. I'm not looking to make big changes to the windows or add a sprinkler system. So if we had to go to that extent, that wouldn't be
okay.
I'd say, okay.
Okay. And
for adults and kiddos,
and
which I expect to be the bulk of my clientele, anyways.
Okay. Because that review hasn't been done with that in mind. I think that's the concern here about changing that condition.
Okay.
I'll certainly, I'll consider it, understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Want to make sure that it is safe and that
yes,
it is still, compatible with the adjoining kind of single family houses too. So anything else that you'd like to tell me, or?
I have just what was in I could repeat what was in my written testimony, which was just that, again, like my big angle with this one is to minimize impact in the neighborhood is honestly because it's small. So this is not a book out, 5 groups of families and have a big party sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I bought it from the original homeowner that had it built.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very nice custom home, has like internal cedar pine siding, right? So it's just really well done. It's a beautiful home. This is a home that my husband and I expect to live in down the road. So we're kind of buying our post-kids home 15 or 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
We've met a lot of the neighbors. They're super great. We're really thankful to be there. And we live local. I'll be the one managing, and I'm only, 3-4 minutes away down Liberty Road. So
okay.
We're really close. So we've met the neighbors, and we went to the neighborhood association and answered questions there. And most of the questions were pretty general. It was like, is this even allowed? Yes, it's been allowed. We've checked all of those pieces with planning, and just gave out my phone number, like they could contact us and, have any questions, that kind of thing.
Well, and clearly you did a pretty good job, or we would have a bunch of people here tonight, or a bunch of written comments from people who were unhappy.
Thank you.
So, do you want to have another week to do a written argument? That's your right.
I guess I don't understand what that, like, to argue further.
You can't add any new information, but if you wanted an additional week to put your thoughts to paper on why this is a great application, you have the opportunity to do that. The applicant always gets that opportunity.
I appreciate that. I will waive that. If I have such thoughts, I'll put them in my journal.
Okay.
Pamela did a great job and, recommending approval. So.
Okay. Very good. So with that, I will tell you the staff recommendation and the fact that there's not any public here means that I will be approving this. I do need to think about that condition and whether I'm inclined to try to edit it in a way that would meet both our needs to get it to review by building and fire and your desire to maybe have another couple of over 12s in there.
I appreciate that, Jim. Thank you.
Okay. So that'll take 10 days to 14 days for me to get something out. And with that, this hearing is also closed. Do we have anything else for the good of the order, anybody?
I don't believe we have anything else. We don't have any direction from the city yet on when we might switch to either in person or a hybrid or remain virtual. We don't have that direction yet, but we do expect to have something soon. So
The other cities that I work at, hybrid ends up being more complicated than anybody thought. So
I expect it to be fully complicated.
yeah, and I'm good at complicating things. So let's see, we have a next hearing on the 27th. Is that right?
Yes, we have one hearing on the 27th for a consolidated 6 applications. It's a conditional use site plan adjustment, driveway approach, tree variance, design review.
I love reading the criteria out for this.
Okay.
Thank you all, and good night. With that,
Thank you. Good night.